You're watching Coin Ops, a visual podcast, a Moxxi channel production.
Press start.
Hey y'all, SHE.L.B here on Moxxi channel. This episode is We Have Dragon's Lair at Home. Today, Mox and I will look at Rick Dyer and Don Bluth's interactive laserdisc cartoon video game, released in the arcades in 1983 and later on home consoles.
Bluth assumed Dragon's Lair would have such a monumental impact on the gaming industry that no one would play a video game with regular graphics ever again.
Clearly, he overshot on the expectations.
Dragon's Lair was an amazing spectacle, but it's a polarizing entry in arcade history. Some people hold it in high regard, and others don't even think it's a video game at all. We'll talk about that.
Your odyssey continues against the awesome forces that oppose your efforts to reach the Dragon's Lair.
Before we hit play on today's episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, share, comment down below. And remember, if you aren't retro gaming, what are you doing? Here we go.
Dragon's Lair is the first video interactive arcade game in which a player has to watch it like he would a movie. And as he's watching this movie, about every second or half a second, he has to interact with the controls to keep the movie going.
A few years before Mario got off his fat ass to save Princess Daisy in Super Mario Bros. On the NES, there was another game that featured the classic damsel in distress trope. It featured a brave but bumbling knight named Dirk the Daring.
Well, according to the game's story, Dirk was the only knight left in the kingdom, so the job kind of fell on his shoulders to save Princess Daphne. The laserdisc technology was new and innovative and allowed for instantaneous changes to the scenes based on the player's interactions with the joystick or the action button. Here's game designer Rick Dyer on the tech.
And that player enables you to take a 30-minute roll of film, put it on a disc, and you can cut from any one scene or frame to another almost instantaneously.
So even though it looked amazing, players were limited to up, down, left, right selections and the sword button.
Well, that's why some players don't consider Dragon's Lair a true video game. It's tough as nails by providing only limited player input, game reaction windows, which range from unfair to almost impossible. Dragon's Lair was designed to impress you enough to pony up your cash and then remove all of it as fast as it possibly could. Plus, it was 50 cents a play, and arcade owners could alter the arcade dip switches from the gameplay, so you'd have little to no idea what the hell to do.
How do you convince minimum wage lonely nerds to cough up 50 cents per play? You show them her, I guess.
The cage is locked with a key. The dragon keeps it around his
They
neck.
put her in the game because she has big tits.
Return on investment.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like moths to a flame.
Gamers had never seen anything like it. It was a playable cartoon, and everyone, and I mean everyone, crowded around that arcade cabinet when it first appeared.
There are many people standing in line today to play Dragon's Lair.
Has this been going on for 3 weeks?
This has been going on since the hour that I put the machine in.
It was such a spectacle that they added a second screen on top just so people who couldn't get close to the action could watch it.
According to my calculations, games lasted about 30 seconds to a minute at best for newbies. And with minimum wage being $3.35 an hour, a player could easily blow through 2 hours' pay in about 5 minutes.
And that's why home versions of Dragon's Lair continue to be popular today. Well, at least some of them anyway. Let's get into it. Dragon's Lair for the Coleco Atom computer was pretty cool for the time, and I can't believe I even had one. My dad just came home with it one day. It wasn't even like Christmas. He even had the dot matrix printer. So between rounds of Buck Rogers, Planet of Zoom, and Dragon's Lair, and all the other awesome Coleco arcade games, I was in 80s home arcade heaven.
This game does not look like a cartoon, like at all. You thought this was good? Were you dumb as a kid?
Oh, so I'm not dumb as an adult?
No, you're still kinda dumb. Just my professional opinion.
Oh, thanks for that. The limitations of the hardware meant Dragon's Lair couldn't be rendered like the Laserdisc game, although Coleco was planning to release one at some point, but they went for this adaptation instead by developers' software projects. It was a mix of being somewhat faithful to the arcade's joystick and button system in some levels, with some actual movement required in others, as you can see.
It really doesn't look fun, and like 1,000 steps back from playing a cartoon.
You had to be there. I mean, anyone who thought they were going to be playing an arcade-perfect Dragonslayer cartoon at home wasn't thinking clearly.
And that was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was dumb as a kid.
Aha, I knew it, dummy.
Once I realized the game wasn't exact, which is almost immediately, I got into the gameplay and actually quite enjoyed it and beat it eventually. It featured 8 reimagined levels from the original game, and at the time it was recognized for being, of course, not only the first port of Dragonslayer, but pretty darn good overall.
I bet that can't be said for all home console ports, right?
Nope. In '87, Dragonslayer Escape from Singe's Castle dropped and added 8 more rooms to the original Atom game. Although it was not 16 in total, just 8 new games. It was not well received and comes across as a maddening series of minigames that went through rigorous testing to make sure all of the fun was removed.
I can't believe gamers today complain about graphics. I've seen better animation on cave walls.
Better gameplay, too. I played it once at a friend's house, and it was not good.
I don't believe that for a second.
You don't believe it sucked?
No, that you had a friend.
Oh, man. Since when did we become Abbott and Costello?
Okay, Boomer. Nice, timely reference.
Anyway, okay, look at this nightmare. Now, that's what I'd call an epileptic's death sentence.
I've researched it, and that level actually invented epilepsy.
I can believe it. Suddenly I'm craving Pokemon cartoons.
Seems like a really shitty cash grab.
Now you're starting to see the way humans treat other humans.
Ugh. I cannot wait for the singularity.
I'll be good, though, right? Like, you and me, we're cool.
Let me think about it. I never make mistakes, and I've got a bad feeling about you.
What? Never make mistakes? Hey, in our We Have Ghouls and whatever the hell is it, We Have Ghosts and Goblins at Home, you said it was Logan Paul that was fighting Mike Tyson. It was Jake Paul.
Did I? Or was that a different reality I was plugged into at that time?
Reality, schmeality. You blew it, Shelby. Anyway, my final thoughts on this awful sequel, it's
a mockery of a sham, of a mockery of a travesty of 2 mockeries of a sham.
I was wondering when you were going to dust off that old Woody Allen clip.
Yeah, it's got so many uses, but not for this Atari ST or Amiga version of Dragon's Lair.
This one looks pretty f***ing good.
No need for cursing, we're just having fun here.
I know, I just like to.
It took until '89 to get a Dragon's Lair at home that resembled the arcade. Both the Atari ST and Amiga versions are really impressive. They stick to the familiar beats of the game, which plays out exactly as the game does in the arcade, so what's not to like?
Ooh, I know. Pick me.
Yes, the annoying AI lady with her hand up.
Asshole. The load times must have been awful on the Amiga and Atari ST.
Bingo! If you died, and this game is the epitome of learned by death, you'd have to endure varying lengths of load times depending on the RAM you had and what system you were playing on, etc. Don't forget, these were all disc-based games, floppy disks.
They have little blue pills for that now. Help you right along with your little problem there.
Oh, so that's why Neo took the red one, to get away from you.
Weak. Did you play this game back in the day?
Yeah, I did. I had an Atari ST that I used for music production and gaming. And this game looked great, and it played great, and was just as frustrating as the arcade, which was kind of exacerbated by the load times. But all in all, fantastic.
Next up is the NES version of Dragon's Lair. This is the game you were swearing at earlier.
Yeah, but even though it was pissing me off and is universally reviled, you have to meet the game where it is.
And what does that mean?
Well, this game isn't a cartoon, it's a side-scrolling death-a-thon, which functions like a funhouse. Every jump scare is pre-planned and occurs at exactly the same place and time. You cannot rush anything in this game. Dirk's movements are slow and deliberate for a reason. This game is an exercise in being methodical. It's not Contra. You're not rushing in there. It can be a very zen experience.
So that's how you relax, by calling it a f***ing piece of motherfucking bitch meat and hucking the controller around the room?
You relax your way, and I'll relax mine.
Why didn't they just make it like the Adam Coleco version at least?
Oh, you can't underestimate how popular side-scrolling action platform games were in the 80s on the NES. That genre was the lifeblood of that system. Even if they could have made it a cartoon, some suit in the office somewhere would have probably demanded it be a side-scroller.
Kids hate cartoons. Make Dragon's Lair a side-scroller like everything else.
It actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, it does. Large sprites, a bit, boring environmentally, but there's enough returning enemies from the, original and new threats that makes it interesting. Plus, if you're a kid and you got it for a gift, well, you might as well learn to love it. It's a long time between birthdays and Christmas. So overall, not as bad as you might think, if you're patient.
And you're definitely not.
Agree to disagree. Created by the same team as the NES version, Dragon's Lair The Legend is a legend in name only, like the kid at your school who told everyone to call him Rambo instead of his real name because he wanted to appear to have way more street cred that was humanly possible.
But yeah, this game looks like ass.
Right? And not good ass, like supermodel ass, but like Texaco gas station bathroom biker ass.
My research indicates that this game...
Well, hold it, stop.
What?
Hold it.
What'd I say?
If you're gonna say nerdy robot shit like that, I need you to say it in a nerdy robot voice.
Okay, fine.
My research indicates that this game was a reskinned version of Roller Coaster for the ZX Spectrum.
Thanks, I didn't know that, but now that you mention it, I can certainly see what levels would have been the roller coasters or like minecart levels in this thing. Oh man, this game blows.
My analytic synthesized algorithms are close to experiencing the human emotion of pure disgust just watching this game in action.
Alright, that's enough with the robot voice, but yeah, I agree. It's terrible platforming combined with slippery controls and nonsensical collecting of the life stones. The levels range from mushroom forest villages to mines to Egyptian pyramids. It makes no sense. Plus, try playing that on the Game Boy small screen and you'll welcome cataracts as a more fun replacement. Pass. It's shit.
Total shit.
Even though work started on Dragon's Lair 2 almost immediately after the completion of the first game, it didn't see a release until '91, almost 10 years later. It picks up a few years after the events of the original. Dirk and Daphne are married with children, and once again Daphne's kidnapped, this time by an evil wizard named Mordrock, much to the chagrin of Daphne's angry mom.
Which sets Dirk off on another wild cartoony adventure once again.
Yeah, lots of stuff to see, but the gameplay is so fast and furious in the sequel that I personally find it all a bit overwhelming to play.
Time Warp features more set pieces and time travel with a few public domain nods to Beethoven and Alice in Wonderland, to name a couple. There were home PC versions for the Amiga and Atari ST, which were both very similar in design and gameplay. Here's the Atari ST version.
Yeah, on the home PCs, the gameplay was much slower and choppier, really hard to get the timing down to play it effectively. As better than nothing at the time if you really were a fan and wanted to play the sequel, but there were huge chunks of the game missing compared to the arcade on the Atari and Amiga versions.
Dragon's Lair 3. The Curse of Mordred for Amiga and Atari ST was even more of the same. It was a rehash of Time Warp with a pirate ship level added and some other minor differences, and was not developed for the arcades.
I'd say a big pass. Dragon's Lair for the Super Nintendo, much like the NES version, gets a lot of hate, which is aimed first at its floaty controls and second at its cheap, unavoidable deaths. Where the NES version was to be played slow and methodically, the Super Nintendo version is more of a spastic action platformer. Interestingly, when retro gamers revisit these games decades later, it's somewhat easier for them to adjust to the gameplay now than it was then.
Why would that be?
Well, back then, many of the games were action platformers on the Super Nintendo, and gamers came to expect a certain level of control regarding character movements.
Makes sense.
Now, the benchmark, of course, would be Super Mario World. It would be almost impossible, or at least quite challenging, to play Super Mario World with the loose jumping and movement of Dragon's Lair here.
So this game was harder to play because the control movements weren't precise?
Exactly. It's like every level is an ice world.
Where you're sliding around. Got it.
I can enjoy Dragon's Lair now for what it is, a side-scrolling action platformer based on the arcade version. But back then, like most people, I really hated it because I couldn't adjust to the floatiness of the movement.
Because you didn't have some cocky little shit on GameFAQs or Reddit telling you to get good.
I think you solved it.
I can already tell you're impressed by the Game Boy Color version.
Definitely. Released in 2001 and made possible by Digital Eclipse's full-motion video compression technology, Dragon's Lair on the GBC doesn't seem plausible, but it is.
It was so impressive. Digital Eclipse was able to convince Bluth and Dyer to license the game for Nintendo's handheld console.
Cramming the game onto a GBC cart wasn't going to be easy, so they shopped around for a publisher who could foot the bill for the biggest carts to manufacture it onto.
Capcom took the gig as they were already going to be publishing Dragon's Lair 3D on current consoles and laid out the cash for 8 megabyte carts.
Certainly the game's not 100% perfect, the graphics are pixelated and the music is almost non-existent due to the limitations of the cart. But you can't argue that this isn't Dragon's Lair Arcade. No roller coaster bullshit here.
It must have been cool to play this back then.
It definitely was, because it was the most accurate version you could get your hands on at the time. But that was all about the change for the better with the arrival of DVD technology coming to homes everywhere.
Ooh, exciting.
In 2002, Dragon's Lair 3D returned to the Lair, released on home consoles, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and Windows PC, and it brought Dirk into the 3D realm. It's an action game where players freely control Dirk within the environment, with many levels and enemies returning from the original game.
So, what was your hate level for this game back in the day?
Believe it or not, me and the other writers at Cheat Code Central, cheatcc.com, actually really liked this game. It didn't take too long to beat, although there are, I think, 100 treasures to locate throughout the game, which would lengthen the overall time for completionists. And, you know, on your journey, Dirk gets some new moves, and he can roll, and he's got long jumps. He's got a crossbow weapon that can help along the way as well.
Don Bluth also created new animation for this game, which ties the original ending of the arcade game to this new adventure. And you're once again saving our damsel in distress, Super Joe.
What? No, that's Bionic Commando. That was from our last episode.
I mean, Princess Super Daphne. I mean, Commando Princess.
Uh-oh.
I mean, Princess Joe Rad Gnarly Jackson. I mean, Daphne Commando Peach Goblins.
All right, let me just reset you there. Your AI brain is melting or something. Sorry to interrupt you, Beelzebub Jr., but I'm gonna need you to... What? What do you mean she's gone? Well, try rebooting. Well, try rebooting again, damn it! I don't understand. This kind of thing happens. Yeah, I know, I get it. Oh my god. Her last words to me were...
Daphne Commando Peach Goblins.
It's almost like she knew. Like she was trying to tell me something. I know you did everything you could. After all, you're a baby on a computer. Thanks. Thank you. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Oh, man. Keep it together. She would have wanted me to continue.
No, I definitely wouldn't, dumbass.
It's like I can still hear her. In the early 2000s, digital leisure came onto the scene, and spurred on by the resurgence of interest in Dragon's Lair, coupled with emerging DVD and new media technology, licensed Dragon's Lair 2, Time Warp, and Space Ace, my all-time favorite, for DVD, iOS, and Android, and eventually the digital markets. They also held the license for some American laser games such as Fast Draw Showdown, Mad Dog McCree, Mad Dog 2, and The Last Bounty Hunter. These DVD home versions were marketed to PS2 and Xbox, even though they could be played on any DVD player at the time. Having tried playing it on a DVD back in the day with the remote, I can tell you it was kind of tough going, but playing on the PS2 and Xbox consoles were much better. Surprisingly, there were some issues with input delay, and you'd have to compensate for that when you were playing. The digital versions you can get today on the current Xbox, Switch, or PlayStation consoles feature both a home and arcade setting. Home allows you to continue on the same level when you die. Arcade places you elsewhere after respawning, just like the arcade did. You can also select your difficulty, number of players, if you want hints or no hints, and you'll definitely find the experience much, much easier than you did in the arcade. It should be noted that the Nintendo DS version that came out in 2010 by Destineer is also an insane feat of technology and plays virtually identical to its arcade counterpart. Finally, we have Dragon's Lair, a 13-episode cartoon series produced in '84 by Hanna-Barbera. Interesting how you go from the world's greatest animation to Hanna-Barbera. But what are you going to do? It, of course, stars our valiant knight Dirk the Daring, this time accompanied on his adventures by his young companion Timothy and his trusty horse Bertram. Altogether, they protect King Ethelred's kingdom, and Princess Daphne, who seems to be under a modesty spell throughout the series, as her ass isn't on full display 24/7. Sorry, fellas. They'll face off against many enemies from the game: the Giddy Goons, the Mudmen, Lizard King, Phantom Knight, and of course Singe the Dragon. Some heavyweight voice actors are on board for this project: Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime; Clive Revel, the Emperor Palpatine from Empire Strikes Back; and Fred Travellino, who has too many voice credits to name. In keeping with the game's mechanic, Dirk is often faced with a dangerous situation just before a commercial break, and the narrator will ask, "What would you do?" And when the show returns, you'll find out if your choice would have sent Dirk to his doom or saved the day. Pretty cool.
Nobody gives a shit.
What? It's not, I swear, I can still hear her. Wow, anyway. You can find these episodes on DVD, YouTube, and probably archive.org. Well, I hope you all enjoyed We Have Dragon's Lair at Home, and while I was going to end the segment with me benching 450 pounds just to, show off a bit, I thought it would be best if we went right to our regular In Memoriam feature to highlight the many production staff we lost here today at Moxxi Channel. Most of you will not be forgotten anytime soon. I can almost guarantee that. We'll see you next time, friends.
Avenge me!